Hey, what's up everybody? Jason here. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Positive Grid Spark Amp and comparing it to the Line 6 Amplifi TT. Now the most important question for deciding which one of these is the better option is to look at these two marketing images and decide who looks like they're having the most fun. All right, so other than the terrible guitar playing, what I wanted to accomplish with that test was an apples to apples comparison. I wanted to take two amp heads and compare them side by side. And both of these devices have a Vox AC30, which I used for the clean example, and they both have a 2001 tread plate, which I used for the heavy example. So the first batch of playing was completely raw sound. So the sound being recorded from the hardware through USB into Logic. Everything in the apps were identical for both, so the bass, the mid, the treble, gain, everything was the same, and there were no other effects turned on. No stomp pedals, no reverb, no delay, nothing like that. The second playing example was adding some post-production in Logic just so you could hear how you could shape the tone differently. So I'll leave a link in the description below with a list of all of the amp models that they both use, but for now let's move on to the major feature differences between the two. Right off the bat, obviously the big difference is the Spark amp is a full amp with a speaker. The Line 6 is a desktop unit that really needs to be plugged into an external speaker system. So why the comparison? So the Line 6 module is about $100 cheaper than the Spark amp and has pretty much the same features. Obviously you would have to hook it up to an external speaker, but I think for the intended audience, people would be cross-shopping these devices. So Line 6 also has the Amplifi 30, which uses the same mobile app and also has a speaker built into it, and that's about $100 more than the Positive Grid Spark amp. So let's get right into looking at the differences between these two. All right, so I'll put these main specs up on the screen as I'm talking through it, and I'll just talk about the major differences between the two. So the difference with the number of pieces of hardware in the module, there's a lot more in the Line 6. So the Spark amp has 30 amps and claimed 10,000 plus tones. The Line 6 has 70 plus claimed amps and 20 plus cabinets. So there are actually about 78 amps in there now and 25 cabinets. So obviously they've expanded it because this Line 6 module has been out for quite a long time. So if you add up all the combinations in the Line 6, it's over 140,000 combinations. And that doesn't include some of the other cool things that the app can do. So another major difference is the app is very, very simple with the Spark amp, which I like. You don't get a whole lot of options. You just get some basic types of pedals, and in that effects chain, you get 6 in total. So you have 3 before the amp head, you have 3 after the amp head. So you get a gate, compressor, and distortion pedal before the amp. After the amp, you get modulation, delay, and reverb. So with the Line 6 module, you get up to 9 things if you don't include the amp head. So in addition to the same things you get with the Spark app, you also get a wah pedal, an EQ control, and a volume control as well. Now the biggest difference is you can move those things around in the Line 6. So you can move the delay before or after the amp, you can move the reverb around. Some of the things are fixed, so it won't allow you to put the wah pedal after the amp, for example, but you do get that little extra bit of customization that might help. Okay, the next thing is the difference in the controls. So the controls on the Line 6 are on the front, and you get drive, bass, mid, treble, and reverb. And the cool thing you get with this little blend knob here is it's push action. So depending on what function you're using, you can push to blend the streaming music with your guitar sound. Push it again, it's going to control the main volume as well. So that's pretty neat as well. The other kind of features are very similar. Both have Bluetooth, but the Line 6 actually has a Bluetooth button on it. So everybody knows Bluetooth is the worst technology ever created. This, at least you can hold down this Bluetooth button and it will reset the Bluetooth device. So if you're having any problems connecting, you can do that. The Spark doesn't have that button, and you just have to shut the thing off and turn it back on again. The other controls, they both have a tap tempo button on it that acts as a tuner. So if you hold that tap button in, you'll get a tuner display. With the Spark, it's the lights that are up on the top. And with the Line 6, it's actually the lights around the ring that light up. So it's going to show you if you're sharp or flat on the actual light around this ring, which is pretty cool. And both of them allow you to store up to 4 presets. The biggest difference with the Line 6 is because it has a foot switch output on it, you can hook that up and you can actually control those 4 right there with your foot switch. With the Spark, you'd have to hack something together, and if I can find it, I will post a link to someone who actually created a little Raspberry Pi hack where he actually made a little 4-controller foot switch that works with the Spark. And lastly, a few differences about support. So the Line 6 does support older operating systems and phones, so they'll support Android 4 or higher and iOS 10 and higher, whereas the Spark supports Android 7 and higher and iOS 11 and higher. So that might be a deal breaker for some, depending on what kind of device that you have. Starting with the Spark app, the interface is a lot more simplified by comparison to the Line 6 app, which I'll show in a minute. So again, you have limits with the number of devices you can have in your effects chain. You can have 3 hardware devices before the amp and 3 hardware devices after, and you can't click and drag these. So I'm clicking and holding these things. They don't move around anywhere. All you can do is activate and deactivate them by swiping up and down. The way you modify the settings or the components that you're picking is by double clicking, and you get the different options here. Not as many as the Line 6, so I think drive pedals you get 9 with the Spark, I believe. Yep, and with the Line 6 I think you get somewhere 15 to 18, but that's not that big of a deal. The main difference again being in the amp section. So you can switch to a different amp, but you're going to get the matching cabinet. So I'm clicking and holding. You can't modify the cabinet. You can't modify anything about the microphones that are used for the cabinet or early reflections or anything like that, which you can do in the Line 6, which I'll show you in a minute. So very, very simplified interface by comparison. The presets in the tone cloud more or less function identical between the 2 different apps. Here you just click up at the top and all of your presets are stored based on how you've categorized them. And Tone Cloud, clicking on that will allow you to search and scroll through all of the different tones. You can favorite and download things from their Tone Cloud as well. As far as sharing and saving your tones, again, more or less works the same. Click the little 3 dots here and you can overwrite the tone that you're currently editing. You can save it as a new one, or you can share it to the Tone Cloud. Now, both apps give you the ability to store whatever it is that you have set up to the hardware directly. So if I click on Save to Hardware Preset, the Spark isn't on, but so this wouldn't actually work for me right now, but you can pick what channel you want to store this on the actual amp itself, which is pretty cool. And I think that's a great feature for both, is having the ability to store hardware patches right on the device. So if you don't have your phone handy and you just want to plug in some headphones and play along, you can get your most frequently used tones there as well. So the music tab is really where things are different. And really that's the Smart Jam feature. So creating your own tracks to loop with, you can do that with the Spark amp. That feature's not available in the Line 6. You just get the backing tracks and the music. Now the music streaming actually I find to be much better on the Line 6, which I'll show you in a minute. It's just easier, I think, to find stuff. With the Spark, you get a list of your playlists, and that's it. So you don't actually get anything else. Here's all the playlists and recently played, but the navigation is just kind of wonky by comparison. Not that big of a deal, I guess, but it is just a little small difference that with the Line 6 that I'll show you, click on your music library, click on an artist, play a track. Boom. It's much more streamlined. The other feature that the Spark has is the recording. So you click the little record button and you can record yourself playing, which I don't really think is a great feature. I really wish they would have spent more time on being able to modify cabinets and doing some other things as opposed to that. I did a whole video on the 1.6 update if you were interested in checking that out. And that's really it for this app. Very simplified and very simple to use, very easy to use. And now let's take a look at the differences with the Line 6 app. When you load up the Line 6 app, you don't have to log in or register. You can skip it, which is pretty cool. But you go right directly to the edit screen. So where I mentioned you can drag and drop some of these things, if I wanted to move the delay somewhere else, I could move that before the amp. And all of the controls at the bottom will be contextual based on what it is that you're using. So you've got more options for your effects up at the top. You can go into the details section. You can rate if you're pulling tones down from their version of the Tone Cloud. You can categorize them etc., etc. But really, the tone part is where you can do most of this type of stuff. So you can adjust your noise gate, threshold, and decay. There's a wah pedal, which this might be a little wonky if you're, I guess, if you're playing with one hand and you want to modulate your wah like this. But again, because you can use a foot switch with it, that's pretty cool. And I'll probably give this a shot with I have an old Gen X4 lying around. I'll see if I can use that as a foot switch for it. So the stomp pedal, you get a bunch of different options here, and you get more here than you do with the Spark amp as well, but you can pick all of these options and you can adjust the, let's click on done. You can adjust the drive, the gain, and the tone. So this will be contextual based on whatever module it is that you're picking. So if I pick boost and EQ, then I get more options there. So the app is kind of slick and really cool to use. It is more complicated, but it's pretty cool with the customizations that you get. Now, as far as amps, both of the devices, the software is controlled by the hardware. So the bass, mid, treble, reverb, and drive knobs will control the functions in the app here as well, much like the same way it does in the Spark. And you click the little picture of the amp, and now you can switch between various different kinds. So they've got clean, American, British, high gain, and you can pick whichever ones you want and then customize that there. Now the biggest difference again with the Line 6, you can click on the little cab button, and then now you can adjust the cabinet. So you get options. It's limited with the cabs you can pick, but at least you get them. So if you wanted to change these things, you can absolutely do that. You can adjust the early reflections, and here's the microphone. So now, here you go. So you get limited options. You can choose an SM57 straight on at a 45-degree angle, or you can choose 1, 2, 3, yes, 4. So 4 different types of mic combinations that you can use for that, which is cool. All the rest of the effects work the same. You get a compressor where you can adjust the gain and the threshold. Now the compressors are better in the Spark because here you just get a general compressor. There's no option here to pick another one. So you just get whatever stock one comes in here. And by accident, I double clicked on this. So now this is showing me that I can assign this to a pedal. If I have the pedal hooked up to the Spark, or sorry, to the Line 6, I can adjust certain settings to the actual foot switch controller. So let's get out of that. The EQ, same thing. You don't get the chance to pick a different type of EQ. You just get the options that are up on the screen. The volume is your min and your max position, and modulation. There's a few options you can have here. So all the typical ones that you would get: chorus, flange, warbles, analog choruses, phasers, etc. So you do get some more options there as well. And reverb, same thing. You can switch between different types of reverbs. So you do get a bunch of different types of combinations that you can pick. And with the interface, you can, yes, I'll just create a new tone. Whatever you have, you can create a new tone, and you can save it and categorize it as well. You can also share, so you can share to your tones. You can publish it to their cloud, and oh, cool, Facebook timeline. So very similar to how the tone cloud works in the Spark amp, you can do the same with this amp. So tones, I think, is really where you would get some cool options, where you can search through. Well, I don't have the device connected, so I will do that as well. Let's just go here. There. So very similar to how the tone cloud works with the Spark amp. You can pick the settings, it will bring it down, and you can customize it on your device as well. What I do like about the Line 6 app is the music is a lot easier. If I want to play my music, boom, it's just going to bring your music library up right away, and then you can go in, and when you pick something, it is actually going to suggest guitar tones. There you go. So there's some of the tone matches if you are trying to match something to music, which I think is pretty cool. I think that's more useful than just the jam mode that is in the Spark. So now I can go and I can use jam tracks. I can download some jam tracks here and play along with them. And you'll notice on the line 6, because it does have that blend button, you can actually blend the sound of the streaming music with your guitar, which is pretty cool. The Spark amp, you would have to adjust your output volume and use the little tiny music volume knob on the top to be able to control that. But fundamentally, they're very, very similar products as far as how you would use it. So now I'm just going to do a wrap up with some final thoughts and how I use these devices. All right, so final thoughts and wrap up. I guess it really depends on what the deal breaker is for you. So if you want a practice amp that you can just plug your guitar in and play with no BS, the Spark obviously is a better choice, because the line 6, you'll have to have it hooked up to an external speaker. This would depend on what's your practice regime. So do you practice in the same place every time? Then the speaker might not be that big of a deal. So I just have the line 6 permanently plugged in into my setup downstairs, and I don't ever need to move it around. I do have the Spark if I need to drag it somewhere quickly, or if I want to just play loud somewhere. It's kind of nice to have that, and I don't have to worry about hooking up speakers. But think about how you practice, where you practice. If you're mostly in the same spot all the time, it's not really a huge deal. Plus, if you do need to carry it around for portability, there's a headphone jack anyway, so you can just put your headphones on and play. So that might be a deal breaker. The second deal breaker might be the level of customization. So if you're really finicky about dialing in your sound, the line 6 is a better option because there are more options. So you can move some of your effects around. You have more combinations of amps and cabs and effects pedals and things like that. So you can customize your sound and dial it in exactly. I think the other things that would matter is depending on what your view of jam mode is with the Spark, and I've done some videos on that. Honestly, I never use that feature. I'm always, like I said, I'm always down here. So if I'm practicing and I'm playing along, I've got my studio monitors here. I'm just playing something through Spotify. I'm playing along with it. So that is not really a big feature for me. The creating your own tracks with the Spark, I never use that either, because again, I'm always down here in the dungeon and I've got Logic up, so I'm doing any songwriting and recording right into Logic anyway, so that's not a big deal for me. I would say the tone matching feature of the line 6 is pretty cool. So if you're just playing along with your music, it's really neat that it will say, here's some tones that you could choose that will kind of match what it is that you're playing. So that's kind of an awesome feature as well. And I'm not really big on, hey, I love the tone from that dude, I want that tone. I go with whatever sounds good to my ears. But as a learning tool, it's really cool that you can put on a piece of music. It'll suggest some possible tones. I don't believe it's going to be perfectly accurate, but at least it's going to show you differences with different types of amp models. So if you get into songwriting and you get into production, you'll at least know, okay, if I want this kind of tubey dark sound, a rectifier would be good, or something along those lines. You'll start to learn the sounds of different amp models. So that might be valuable as well. But fundamentally, for practicing along with stuff, like I said, if I'm recording, I'm using Logic to record stuff. If I'm learning songs, I'm using ultimateguitar.com, and I'm just playing along with whatever's coming out of the speakers. And on that last point, the cool thing about that is you don't have to worry about tuning your guitar, because with Ultimate Guitar, you can tune what's being played because it's just being played through MIDI up and down, so you can match it to your guitar as well. So I hope you enjoyed this short video. I'm going to be doing a more in-depth review of the Line 6 that I'm currently using for recording a couple of songs right now, just for fun to see how it stacks up, because I've used the Spark on some commercial tracks. So if you do have a question, leave a comment. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.